Percocet Productions, and today we're going to be ranking all of the Red Dead Redemption 2 gang deaths.
So basically, there's 10 of them. We didn't count the Red Dead 1 versions of their deaths.
If you didn't know, spoilers, and
Yeah, a very good time to put a spoiler
a
alert.
big spoiler warning. Click off the video. So, number 10 for me, I have Karen. I put her because, of course, some would even argue that she's not dead because there's no confirmation, right? There's no confirmation in game. There's just a line of dialogue that basically explains that she died and that she drank herself to death, which is kind of a disservice to I think her character, because I mean it makes sense to have a character just like not die off screen but just die somewhere. You kind of need an end story for these characters, and
Right. And I 100% agree because I put Karen at number 10 as well, exactly for the reason you said.
yeah.
Her death isn't confirmed, and also if she is dead, it's basically just her drinking herself to death after the gang already basically split up.
Right. Is it
So it
even
was,
a death? Like, it's kind of just like an abstract intro.
yeah, there's no real confirmation.
Number 9 for me is Carrion. And I put him here because, of course, we see him die. He's kind of like the sacrificial lamb, gets captured. You're at the camp in the mansion, and he basically rides in headless horse style, right? He rides in, and then you get attacked. It's a cool. The coolest part about his death is actually not his death. It's what happens after when they raid the camp, and then you get this big epic fight scene. And I think his death is kind of overshadowed, and it's just kind of like a shock moment, instead of something that really, like, because he was just becoming cool too, so they built him up just to knock him down,
Pretty
and
much.
it's just like they just got rid of him.
Yeah, I can see that. That's not my number 9, but before I do get in it, I'm gonna just say Kieran, not Carrion.
Carrion.
But oh well.
Carrion.
So my number 9 was actually Susan. The whole reason I put her so low is because she basically didn't really die anyway special. I think was it Micah was the one that shot her.
Yeah, it was Micah that shot her.
I mean, he literally just shot her. Like there was no real lead up to it. There was no like real standoffish thing. She just had the shotgun, and then I think hell broke loose, and Micah just put her in the dirt.
Yeah.
I don't really think there was any real like surprise to her death. I kind of figured it was going to be coming, so I kind of put it low because it was just like okay, you got shot. There's nothing really like phenomenal about the death, air quotes.
Right.
So that's why I had to just put it as low as I did.
And I think we'll touch more on that later too, because her death is very similar to Molly's death, and I think that's intentional. Now, my number 8 is actually Leopold Strauss. I like the way he died. I like the way he died, and the fact that you don't need to see every death on screen. You don't need to see every death on screen, but it does help if you do.
And that was your number 8.
Yes,
I actually said the same thing. Yeah.
it's a good way to go out. To go out in custody, and Pinkerton's probably killed him or whatnot, died in prison, maybe got shanked, who knows.
Well, they said they basically tortured him to death
Right.
at some point in one of the dialogues. But the reason I gave him a little extra love for not seeing him die was because it said that he didn't give up the gang. He took all the secrets to the grave with him.
Yeah.
So he was really like a ride or die.
Yeah, and it's perfect way for like the scummy like debt collector to go out, like this.
I mean, he's the whole reason that Arthur had TB to begin with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I really like his character arc beginning to end. Strauss, like they did a good job. They did a fine job. But my number 7 is actually Susan, the one that you mentioned earlier. I did put her up a little bit because I do like the symmetry in the way that her and Molly died. And I think Susan's death, it was a nice build up for Micah as being like, I mean, he basically killed one of his own,
Right.
heat of the moment, gets shot. I do think they did kind of do her dirty though, because like it just kind of happens and everybody's just kind of like,
Meh.
yeah, like the motherly figure of the group, and then they're just kind of like, okay, moving on.
Oh well, okay, she's dead.
Bigger fish to fry at this point, let's just forget about her dying. And
They didn't even give her a gravestone like the other characters.
really, I thought
I mean,
there was.
well, there was, if I remember, I think it was one in the game files, but I don't think it was actually used.
Maybe.
I think it's like technically under the camp is her grave, but you can't get to it.
Oh, maybe the idea is that like they had to lead that area and then they didn't have
Mhm.
time to do it canon wise. But
Right.
interesting.
Or nobody dug her a real grave because they all thought she was a traitor. Either way, so that's gonna lead me to my number 7. I actually said Micah. Now,
Ooh.
I didn't like Micah. I mean, he was a great villain. You know, I hated him. But I also feel like his death was not really like I don't know. I don't think it was really deserved. Like, yeah, he got shot a couple times, and then he basically just took a couple steps and said, "You shot me," and then fell over. Like, why not just stick a thing of dynamite up his ass and blow him to pieces? You know, like something like that. Something grand, phenomenal. Drop him off a cliff or, you know, something. Not just pow, pow, pow. You shot me. Done.
Yeah, that's a tough one to rank. That's definitely a tough one to rank. Micah's an interesting death. It's like
I mean, like, I will say, yeah, it was great to kill him because it really did give you that sense of, like, completing the circle.
mhm.
But it was just, I just feel like it could have been a little more grand than what it was.
Should it have even have been John that killed him? Like I don't know if it should have been. Like I mean,
Honestly, I feel like maybe it should have been poetic justice, and he ended up getting TB from Arthur or something, and you find him, and he's like, he's already sick and dying,
okay, that's
and you could choose to leave him to die on his own, or you could put him out of his misery there.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea
I feel
actually.
like that would have been a better ending because then it would have really come full circle.
I feel like Arthur just never got any like
Closure.
comeuppance on him. Like he was
No,
awful
like
to him all story. And like sure John getting that revenge is cool and all, but like who were we really attached to at that point, you know? Not really
right.
John and Micah like there was no I mean they didn't like each other, but there was no like not the animosity that Arthur and Micah had.
Oh well, no, and like
So,
the whole reason that he even goes after him is because he knows that Mike had basically killed him. But I mean, yeah, it's cool revenge and all, but I feel like it should have been Arthur who got the last laugh.
yeah, even in death, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we'll get more into him later, but yeah. My number 6 is actually Lenny. I put Lenny at number
Eh,
6 because, okay, Red Dead 2. I love that they did all these shock deaths, right? You have so many
Yeah.
deaths that just come out of nowhere. You cannot predict them. And Lenny's probably is it's one of the most shocking deaths because you just had Hosea die and then Lenny dies as soon after. Just you miss it. You blink, you miss it. He's dead. You
Yeah.
think he might come back, right? Maybe he survived, but no, he just dies there, and his death kind of gets overshadowed by Hosea's death.
Hmm.
Which is just unfortunate because Lenny was really a really super likable character.
Oh, he was a great character.
So yeah, it's just like it just kind of happens. I mean, you could take that as being like, you know, you could take it the way I took it, or you could take it in the way of like, damn, that's phenomenal, right? Like, oh, they just killed him, came out of nowhere, he's just gone. Like that's really how it would be if you tried to rob a bank in those times. So yeah,
And you know what? We'll talk about that one a little later. My number 6, I actually said Hosea. Now, the whole reason I put his death here was because of the fact that you saw it coming. I mean, I once they had him, I figured there's no way that he's getting away. You figure there's a row of cops there. Even if he were to like somehow get loose, he ain't getting far. And yeah, it sucked. I did like Hosea a lot, but like when like if you were to actually like look at it from a realistic point of view, he was really screwed. Dutch was not going to give himself up anyway, but he also just was popped. I mean, Jose really just got popped for no reason.
damn.
Like he really used up his leverage to get Dutch to come out. Milton, I think it was,
Hmm.
and he really used his leverage right off the bat and just killed him and had no leverage. So then, of course, Dutch is going to fight. So I kind of think that was dumb. I feel like if they really made him smarter, he would have like gotten Dutch to come out or something and then shot him and then tried to get Dutch. But I don't know. I just feel like his death was very like you knew it was coming once he was caught.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Top 5, I will go with Molly O'Shea as my number 5.
I said the exact same thing. Number 5 for her.
Perfect place for her to go. Trade her in the group. She rats out the group, and there's so much love for this death because Susan Grimshaw completely shot her up.
She
Completely
blasted
blasted
her
her.
guts out. Like there was nothing left. It was just
It was great seeing. I mean, especially when you think like she's super traitor, and then you find
oh
out
yeah.
like she really didn't. You know, like it really wasn't her. Um,
Yeah, when you find out that she really wasn't the one that snitched on everybody, it really is like, well, she just got blown away for no reason, and
Yeah.
everybody was cool with it.
And I think that moment, like, there's a lot of moments when the group is never the same.
Oh
That
yeah.
moment, I mean, killing your
Well,
own,
I
that,
was gonna say that's the one I think where Karen really took her downward spiral. I think it started with Sean, but then once Molly went, I think that was it. I think that was when Karen's spiral just took
right,
off. And
right.
honestly, it really was like a shock. Like they didn't show Grimshaw at all. She just came out of nowhere and blasted her.
Yeah,
So it was actually, I think it was a pretty good shock factor because you don't expect it.
yeah.
So I think number 5 is a fair spot for it.
I think the only reason why I don't place it higher is because when you look at it, I mean, these are some cowboys, some like the baddest of the bad in the land, and I mean, she basically died over a romance, over like she basically died over like thinking, oh, my man Dungy cheated, and like that's like
And she just wanted
that's
to try to get back at him, and look where it got her.
yeah, it's like.
Yep.
I mean, it's like when you take that into account, you got to think what was Molly's point in the story, and then you think like, damn, she
Right.
was just a damsel, and then
Pretty
a
much.
jealous damsel. So yeah, my number 4 is Hosea that you touched on earlier, and I
Okay.
think he's the combo death with Lenny, of course, and this death might be the hardest for me in the game to take, even more so than Arthur's, because you knew Arthur's was coming way, 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 way before. Hosea's death, man, I wish he was there later in the story. Like, if there's any character that I could have plopped into the whole story, Hosea would probably be that guy. Because, I mean, he was just like Grimshaw, she was the grandmother of the group, but Hosea was really the figure of the group, like
Oh
there's
yeah.
Dutch, Hosea, and Arthur. Those were the three. And Hosea, he just had a certain wit and a certain charisma to him that was just perfect for like the grandfather type
Right.
character. And his death, the way he gets shot and then just slowly falls over, and it's like it hits. I like those deaths. I think there's a lot of the time Red Dead does these deaths where basically somebody gets shot and then all hell breaks loose, right? A whole fight breaks out. Same thing happened here. Had a huge fight break out after this death, and yeah, this is. I know I've said it a million times, but this was a big turning point in the game. Huge catalyst for the rest of the game.
Well, yeah, because I mean, there went the sense of reason.
Yeah, Dutch lost everything.
Hosea was the one that kept Dutch in line, and then once he was gone, you see how bad Dutch became.
Completely
I'll take
nailed
us
it.
to my number 4. I actually said Kieran.
Right. Okay.
I think the reason I ranked him so much higher was just because of the fact that it was a shock factor, and it was the way that he died. I mean, you figure you're just at the camp, and then all of a sudden here comes the headless horseman, basically, and like the fact that he's riding in holding his own head in his hands, and what was it? His eyes were plucked out too, right?
Yeah, I don't remember that, but
I think
yeah,
his eyes
probably
were
was.
plucked out too. And then, like you said, all hell breaks loose. I mean, let's be honest here. I think by this point, none of the deaths were like gruesome. Like it was basically just like, oh, somebody would get shot here, somebody would get shot there. We hadn't had one that was basically like mutilation.
Yeah.
It really was like a shock. Like it catches you off guard, especially when you're starting to like him too. Like he was actually starting to fit in, and everybody was starting to like him and trust him. And then they did my man dirty.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right about that. And I think that will lead into my number 3 because there's a point I have with it. My number 3 is Sean,
Same
and
here,
I
actually. Yeah.
think the only reason why I think I didn't give more credits to the death of Lenny and Carrion is because
Kieran.
is because they did the shock fast factor a ton of times,
They did.
and I think that damaged it a bit for me. But Sean is definitely the best of them
Well, he
because
was the first
first,
shock factor, and
exactly,
that one really was like, holy shit, they really will just kill anybody.
yeah,
I mean,
and
it
man,
wasn't even like a full cutscene. My man was just walking along, turned around, and then that was it.
yeah,
His brains were splattered on the camera.
it was gruesome too. Not as gruesome, but it was gruesome too, because you see the shot happen like exactly close up shot.
Oh yeah.
bang.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even expect it, and
No.
Sean was definitely one of my more liked characters, and so it was really sad. I
Yeah.
thought Sean was hysterical.
You never got to see him really develop, you know?
No, and that's a shame.
Never. Brutal death, absolutely brutal death, because it's one of those what ifs, you know? It's one of those
Oh
what ifs
yeah.
because it's like he gets killed so early that, you know, that's it. Like,
Well, something else I noticed that I'm detecting a pattern on, I literally just thought about. They basically took out anybody that would have supported Arthur. You know,
yeah,
like you
yeah,
had Susan,
Hosea, Lenny.
Hosea, Lenny, Sean, Kieran, Strauss probably would have. They like took out all the power that Arthur would have had towards the end.
Yeah.
And then it was basically just Javier, Bill, Micah, and Dutch. You know, like yeah, you had Sadie and um, Charles
Mm-hmm.
and John, but let's be honest here. If they would have had Sean, Lenny, Hosea, there never would have been like Dutch and him probably wouldn't have went off the deep end at all. But even if he
No.
did, they would have been able to counter it. You know?
Yeah, it wouldn't have went that bad.
No.
It would not have went that bad. That's actually a great point, a great eye that you saw there. My number two is Micah. Now, I
Okay.
100% agree with everything you said. I 100% agree with everything you said. Um, about it being underwhelming, about it being like undeserved, that there should have been worse. Completely agree with that. But man, it's Micah. Like, and I don't really have too much defense for it, but it's like the only villain that you're just itching to kill in the game.
Right.
And I'm glad he died. He basically had to because he's not in Red Dead 1. But
Right.
he's such a big villain. Like he might be the second most. No, he's one of the most important characters in the game by far. Like,
He's
and
definitely the most hated.
yeah, and yeah, it's Micah's death. Probably one of the most important deaths because it basically dictates the entire epilogue and gives purpose to the ending of the game and redemption. Right, it starts
Right.
off everything with John, um, and yeah, I put Micah there. Maybe I put him a bit high. I can totally see it. Thinking back on it, I put him too high, but yeah, that's where I put him too.
All right. Well, takes us to my number two, which is a far cry from where you had him, but I put Lenny at number two. Um, I think the whole reason I put Lenny this high was one, he was a very likable character. So watching him get popped was fucked up. You know, like it was really, really sad. But then I think the other reason was it was a shock factor. Like, yeah, they did the shock factor a couple times, but I think what really made this one stand out was the fact that they didn't even like highlight it. It really was like a blink and miss it kind of thing. And it was hard hitting, you know? Like you didn't need a cutscene for it. You literally were just running and then all of a sudden, bam bam, and he's down and you have to leave him.
Right.
So I think it was just really like I guess I would say it was more or less just like a true shock factor. Like normally if a cutscene shows up, you can kind of sense something's going to happen because it's a cutscene. But when you're in a full blown like I guess I'd call it an air quotes chase scene where you're following him and you just watch him get mowed down, that's when it's really like holy shit, what just happened?
Right.
Because you're playing it and you have to actually leave him. So I think it makes the shock factor that much better.
Yeah, and it's not even. I mean, it is a cutscene, but it's not even a cutscene, right?
No,
So
it's literally like they're still using the game engine basically, and you just watch him go, and then you're right back to running. It's not like a full blown cinematic cutscene.
yeah, and because they didn't highlight it, that's why it doesn't feel like yeah, the other deaths were like the other shock factor deaths. They were the highlight of the death, right? Or
Oh
the
yeah,
scene. They were the highlight of the scene. This was not the highlight of the scene. It was just something blinking, you'll miss it.
yeah. The highlight of the scene was you're trying to get away,
Yeah,
and I think they did a good job like translating that. Like you're not worried about that. You're just trying to save yourself, which is kind of shitty to think about. But I mean, in a way, that's basically how it goes.
yeah.
What are you gonna do? Sit there and let yourself get caught?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, number one.
We
I
all know what it is.
mean, what else could
Pretty
it
obvious.
be? I will say the one caveat to this is if you die with low honor and you get stabbed, then you die by Micah.
Right.
That is probably not. I don't consider that canon, but like if that happens, maybe it's real hard pill to swallow. But the way Arthur died, I think the best part about it is the whole lead up to it, right? The
Right.
the TB tuberculosis slowly creeping through, infesting his lungs. You're slowly dying throughout the whole game. You know it's coming and it still hurts. The same. The horse dies. The song that plays, the Unshaken, Unbroken song that
Hmm.
plays in that final mission. Everything together, right? It's a whole package. And then him dying on the hill.
Right.
What more can be said?
Yeah, it was a very, very cinematic death all the way through, even while you're playing from like chapter, what was it, 3 or 4 on, whenever you find out you have it.
Right.
And honestly, I do like the fact that there are multiple deaths and that it is different, like depending on if you go back for the money or not when you have low honor. If you return for the money and you have low honor, Micah basically stabs you in the back, just like he has the whole game, which is a very like fitting thing for you. Like if you're gonna go back for the money instead of helping John, like
That's true. That it is fitting for
which
if
either way, if you have high honor, you basically just die from tuberculosis the same way and injuries from Micah or whatever. But like it's not like getting shot in the back or Micah shoots you in the head when you're on the hill.
yeah, and you just die in like this
Yeah.
little like crappy area and
Oh yeah, the high honor finish was watching like the sun. What was it? The
yeah.
sun come up, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it
that
was.
was that was like really like
You know,
it hurt,
he
you
called
know.
it. There's a scene earlier where he says how he wants to die and then if
Hmm.
you get the high honor, you die that way. Um there's an argument to be made that maybe there should have been more potential endings for Arthur. Like I
Hmm.
mean, it's kind of. I mean, you could go into the game knowing, like, yeah, this guy's not gonna make it out. Like, maybe it would have been nice if there was like an ending where, like, like somehow everything is avoided, right? Like, you
Yeah.
you would have to go back and play it like a second time around, and maybe you can avoid the TB and like, you know, you start a new life somewhere with his love or something. There.
I
You,
really wish there was a way to avoid it. Like
yeah,
you never playing the game again, you don't want to play that mission because you know what's coming. You try to
yeah.
avoid it as long as you can.
There should have been a way, low key. There should have been a
There should
way.
have been something special that you had to do where it took like a lot to figure it out, but once you did, I mean,
Yeah,
they could have had the game end the same way, but not like with him dying of tuberculosis. It could have just been Micah killing him,
yeah,
you
or
know,
like you just see a scene of him old, like uh,
or something,
you
you
could
know.
do
But
something. You could figure out something.
yeah, there's some way to make it work, but I mean, it does suck.
Yeah, but I mean that is our list. 10 deaths. I mean, eventually we'll probably go into other characters and their endings, but these 10 characters that died main in Red Dead Redemption 2. And yeah, check out any of our other videos, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave a like and a subscription.